There are moments scattered throughout our lives that feel like a skipped beat in the rhythm of the everyday. A flicker in the lights, a word whispered on the wind, a face glimpsed in a crowded room, gone before it can be placed. Most of the time, we dismiss these moments as tricks of the mind, the product of exhaustion or an overactive imagination. But what happens when these moments persist? When the shadows at the edge of our vision refuse to disperse, and the air itself seems to crackle with a strange, unsettling energy. There are stories, whispered in hushed tones and passed down through generations, that speak of encounters that defy explanation. These are the stories that linger in the quiet corners of our minds, the ones that resurface when the lights are low and the world outside feels a million miles away. Stories of ordinary people confronted with the extraordinary, the unsettling, the terrifying. Moments where logic fails and the familiar becomes frighteningly unknown. Tonight, we delve into 5 such encounters. 5 stories that will chill you to your core. Each one a chilling reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Stay until the end. But don't be surprised if these stories stay with you long after the lights come up. In 2011, a young woman named Laura found herself standing on the threshold of a new beginning. She had just moved into a charming, if slightly worn, apartment building on the outskirts of the city. The rooms were filled with the faint scent of dust and old memories, a blank canvas upon which she could paint the next chapter of her life. The first few weeks passed without incident. Laura settled into a comfortable routine, finding solace in the quiet solitude of her new home. She took comfort in the familiar creaks of the floorboards beneath her feet and the gentle hum of the city that drifted in through her window each night. Everything felt normal, but as the days turned into weeks, a disquiet began to settle over Laura, a creeping unease that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. It started subtly, a feeling of being watched, a prickling sensation at the back of her neck whenever she was alone in her apartment. And then she saw him. At the very end of her hallway, shrouded in shadow, stood the figure of a man. He was tall and unnaturally still, his features obscured by the darkness. Night after night, he appeared in the same spot, a silent sentinel standing watch over her. Fear, cold and sharp, began to gnaw at the edges of Laura's composure. She told herself it was just her imagination, a trick of the light, the byproduct of long hours and an overactive mind. She tried ignoring it, focusing on work, losing herself in books, anything to silence the growing dread that coiled in her stomach. But the figure remained, a constant, unsettling presence in her home. It never moved, never spoke, yet its very stillness seemed to scream a silent warning. One night, unable to bear the suffocating tension any longer, Laura decided to confront her fear. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, and stepped towards the figure. Each step felt like an eternity, the air growing thick and heavy around her. As she drew closer, the shadows seemed to deepen, swallowing the hallway in an oppressive darkness. And then the lights flickered. Just for a second, the hallway was plunged into darkness. When the lights flickered back on, the figure was gone. The year was 2007. Jake, a college student, found a worn leather-bound notebook in a dusty bookstore. The air was filled with the scent of aged paper and leather. The notebook's pages were blank, awaiting a story. He purchased it, drawn to its enigmatic presence. Back in his dorm, he pondered what to write, but the weight of the empty pages was overwhelming. He closed the book and turned in for the night. The following morning, Jake awoke with a start. A shaft of sunlight pierced through a gap in his curtains, illuminating the notebook on his desk. As he blinked away the remnants of sleep, he noticed something peculiar. The notebook was open, and scrawled across the once blank pages was a series of entries, written in a neat, unfamiliar handwriting. He picked up the notebook, his heart quickening as he read the words. They detailed his every movement from the previous day, from the moment he woke up to his classes to his late-night pizza order. It was as if someone had followed him, meticulously documenting his every move. Convinced it was a prank, a cruel joke played by one of his roommates, he resolved to get to the bottom of it. He left the notebook on his desk, the door to his room securely locked. A silent dare to whoever was responsible. But the next morning, the pattern repeated. A new entry appeared detailing his every move, every thought he'd had while alone in his room. At the bottom of the page, a chilling sentence was scrawled in a shaky, ink-blotted hand. "You shouldn't have ignored me." There's a weight to old houses, isn't there? A sense of history steeped in the very walls. Sometimes that history whispers, and sometimes it stares back at you. In 1999, Alex moved into a house full of whispers. It was a grand old place, filled with shadows and secrets. But it was the mirror that drew Alex in. His parents dismissed his unease as childish imagination. They told him the mirror came with the house, but Alex felt watched, his every move reflected in the glass. One night, he saw a girl in the reflection. Not a trick of the light, but a girl made of shadows. She stood within the mirror's depths, her eyes fixed on him. Terror, cold and sharp as ice, pierced through him. He called out for his parents, his voice a strangled cry that echoed in the stillness of the old house. But even as the words left his lips, the girl in the mirror began to fade, her form dissolving like smoke into the depths of the glass. By the time his parents rushed into the hallway, drawn by his panicked cries, the mirror was empty. Nothing but his own terrified reflection stared back at him. They tried to soothe him, to rationalize away his fear, but their words rang hollow in his ears. He knew what he had seen. The next morning, driven by a morbid curiosity, and a desperate need to prove that he hadn't imagined it, Alex crept back to the hallway. He examined the mirror, running his hand over its cold, smooth surface, and then he saw it. Carved into the wood on the back of the mirror was a name: Lily, 1887. It was a name whispered on the wind, a name etched in the cold, unyielding grip of time. There's a loneliness to driving at night, isn't there? The world shrinks to the glow of the dashboard and the endless ribbon of highway, the familiar comfort of the radio, a voice to fill the silence. But what happens when that voice isn't a source of comfort? What happens when it speaks from somewhere else? 2015, Richard faced that unsettling question. His car radio shifted, twisted into something off. The station began to jump and skip, then silence. Silence heavier than the engine's hum. And then the voice, deep, distorted, like from the bottom of a well. It spoke his name, Richard. A single word, yet it carried the weight of a prophecy. He froze, heart pounding against his ribs. His mind found no rational explanation. This wasn't a broadcast, not a prank. The voice had known him, spoken directly to him. And then another word: turn back. Richard, every instinct screaming at him to keep driving, found himself obeying. He gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, and slowly eased the car onto the exit ramp. The voice was gone, replaced once again by the comforting murmur of static. He pulled over, engine idling, heart still pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Had he imagined it? A trick of exhaustion, a figment of a tired mind? He sat there for what felt like hours, the silence pressing in on him. Finally, gathering his courage, he turned the radio back on. The station he'd been listening to was gone, replaced by the hushed murmur of a talk show. He continued his drive home, the encounter a chilling memory clinging to him like a shadow. The next day, still shaken, Richard tried to find a logical explanation. He checked his radio history, scoured online forums for reports of similar incidents. Nothing. The frequency he'd been listening to, the one that had carried that chilling voice, didn't even exist. And then the news reports started filtering in. A massive accident, just a few miles down the highway, at the exact time he would have been passing through. If he hadn't turned back, the thought clung to him, a chilling reminder of the voice on the radio, the voice that had saved his life. But who or what had spoken to him through the static, and why? These were questions that would haunt Richard, echoing in the silence of every late-night drive. A chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Paris, the city of lights, a place of romance, history, and whispered secrets. Some secrets are best left undisturbed. In 1983, Daniel found one such secret in a grand old hotel. The hotel, a labyrinth of winding corridors, whispered of forgotten dreams. A rumor of a room that existed only when it chose to. Room 303, heavy with unspoken significance. The air felt thick, heavy, unsettling. The following morning, Daniel made his way to the lobby. He approached the front desk to request a different room, but the receptionist looked confused. "Room 303, sir? There's been a mistake. We don't have a room 303, Daniel insisted, describing the room in detail. The view, the unsettling wallpaper. The receptionist shook her head. "Sir, there is no room 303 in this hotel." Unnerved, Daniel returned to the floor. A wave of disorientation washed over him. The hallway seemed to stretch. Where room 303 should have been, there was only a blank wall. The door, the room itself, had vanished. He stood there, the silence pressing in on him. Daniel checked out soon after, eager to escape. He never spoke of his experience, but the memory lingered. Some doors are not meant to be opened, and somewhere, room 303 waits, a phantom space, a chilling testament to hidden secrets. Some stories fade with time, like whispers lost in the wind. Others, though, refuse to be forgotten. They linger in the shadows, echoing in the silence, a chilling reminder that the world is a stranger, more unsettling place than we often care to admit. The man who wasn't there, the notebook that wrote its own sinister narrative, the girl trapped within the reflection, the voice on the radio whispering warnings from beyond the grave, the room that existed only to vanish without a trace. Are these merely stories, figments of overactive imaginations, or do they hint at something more? Something lurking just beyond the veil of our understanding, something unsettling and inexplicable. Do you believe these incidents have explanations, or are they glimpses into a realm beyond our comprehension, a realm where the lines between reality and nightmare blur? Let us know in the comments what you think. And if you found yourself drawn to these eerie tales, if you dare to venture further into the darkness, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us next time if you dare.